John Rothwell, uh, U.S. Navy from May 28th, 1973 to December 22nd, 1978.
All right. What'd you do in the Navy?
I was a ship fitter welder for the first 2 years, and then I got a chance to go to diving school, and I learned how to do underwater welding, underwater ship fitting, and that's how I ended up my career in '78 as a
Awesome.
welder diver.
Let's start from the beginning. Where are you from, and what brought you to your service in the Navy?
Well, uh, my whole my family, my dad was a Marine officer, was a Marine fighter pilot for 13 years from about 1955 to 1966, and he was killed in Vietnam. And then I took it upon myself to make it my mission to also join. But after seeing how the Marines treat their guys, I decided I'd go the Navy route, path of least resistance sort of thing. Those guys were right across the fence from me in San Diego, and they always had them rolling in whatever. Us, we were just marching.
Yeah, the Marines definitely have a different lifestyle than the rest of the branches are accustomed to.
Yeah, so that's why I joined the Navy. But
What did your mom say about you joining the Navy?
she uh, she said that she didn't particularly care for it much. She had to sign the waiver to get me in, because I was 17 when I joined up. I got an early graduation from high school, and
What was the
when
name of
I,
your high
oh,
school?
yeah,
What was
I'm
the name of
sorry,
your high school?
Valley High School, West Des Moines.
Did you play any sports?
No, I was a swimmer, but I wasn't exceptional.
I'm sure that still helped lead to the Navy diving and stuff. You weren't.
No, I was always a swimmer. I love to swim. I you know just do laps in a pool, and I feel like I'm in my own element in water. Uh, but as far as leading to diving, no, really didn't lead to it. I met a few guys that were divers aboard my first ship, and I got the idea from them. I liked the way they carried themselves. I liked the way they talked. I liked the way that they talked to one another, how they interacted, and I decided I wanted that too. And and it was like I was telling the other guy who was in here earlier. Uh, it was a qualification that you got, and you went to school for it, and you got qualified for it. Now it's a rating. Now you can sign up for it, and you're rated a diver. Like you're a diver third class. You're second or third class petty officer with a little diver deal in the middle of your crow. But when I was in, it was just a little metal helmet device over your ribbons rack.
Yeah, they still get that. They still get the diver
Yeah,
bubble.
the helmet. Yeah,
Yeah, yep, they still get that. Um, so here it is. It's in the tail end of Vietnam, and your mom doesn't want you to join, and you decide you're gonna sign up anyway. How were you feeling about that? Were you have any reservations? What were
none,
your feelings? None.
none, whatever. I had this kind of convoluted idea, revenge, and that went away quickly. And she wanted me to be at a shore station. Going to sea was not something she wanted me to be. She was terrified that I'd end up in Vietnam in the same way my dad ended up. And she did not want to lose her oldest son to the last piece of cannon fodder. So I got myself put on a destroyer, which did not make her very happy. And after that, I got on a submarine tender, and then after that, I went to A school or to diving school. Excuse me,
So where did you go to basic training or boot camp?
San Diego, RTC, NTC, San Diego.
Can you tell us what that was like?
Um, Psychological manipulation from the word go for 9 straight weeks, and you came out feeling that you were invulnerable. I suppose everybody did. It was it the same in the Army? You felt like you could do anything after you got out of boot camp, and then after AIT, you were that much more empowered.
Yeah, and then you get to your duty station and they set you straight real quick.
Yeah, that's about the size of it. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, so where your first was the first place you were at on a destroyer?
yeah. It was a destroyer, a DE, USS Joseph Daniels.
And what was that like? So were you were what I think they're called Muse nowadays. Were you out on a Muse a lot? Were you actually gone or was it rotation? Tell us what that was like.
Well, it was what they call a Westpac, and a Westpac is generally 7 to 8 months, and you're going to a lot of different places, but because of where it was and when because of what she was and where Vietnam was, we were on a gun line on Dixie Station for about 4 or 5 months, and then we rotated back to Hawaii, loaded
Um,
back up, and came back over.
what is Dixie Station?
Dixie Station is the ocean area off the coast of South Vietnam. And Yankee Station is the coast area off of North Vietnam, north south,
Okay.
Yankee Dixie.
So basically, you were going to Dixie Station and coming back. So were you going back and forth a lot, or was how many
No,
rotations?
no, only did it twice. Only did it twice, and it was a one Westpac. It was an 8 month deal, but at the end of 4 months, we had to come back, reload, go back.
Okay. Um, what was that like? What was it like being in the waters off of South Vietnam?
Easy. It was. You'd never know you were in a combat zone. It was much different for sailors, for the most part, unless you were stationed ashore, because there really isn't anything that can reach out to where you are to let you know that there are hostiles that really want to make you go away. But up in North Vietnam, it was a little bit different because you're flying their carriers up there and they're launching aircraft all the time. And when the aircraft come back, you can see the results of what happened to those guys when they went over North Vietnam. We didn't have anything like that that we could see and point to and say, this is the result of what happens when you get shot at. So, no, nobody took any pot shot at us that I knew of. Um, and I was telling the other guy too, I was an HT, so I was below decks all the time. I could hear the guns going off because they vibrate the entire ship. Uh, but I didn't actually see any of it. Occasionally, I'd get to go up on deck and see some of it, but it's loud. It's very loud, and you don't want to stay up there very long.
What was your day to day like while you were there?
um, Getting up at 0500, breakfast, and then if you had to watch, you stood your watch from uh 0800 to 1200, and then you went back to work and worked from 1200 to 400. And then you had knockoff ships work, and you had dinner, and then they had uh, uh, movie time on the mess deck. Or if you had a watch at night, sometimes you'd have two watches a day. You could have the 8 to 12, and then again do the 4 to 8. 4 in the afternoon to 8 p.m., or you would have the 8 to 12 p.m. AM, and or the 12 to 0400. And the 12 to 400, 0400 was a monster because you didn't stop. They didn't let you go to bed to sleep. You worked your entire day, and then you stood in another watch. So it was all around doing PMS, which is like planned maintenance, and standing watches. For the most part, you're just updating everything that they have these little card files that are in the engine room or in after steering or in the welding shop, and they are planned maintenance things by item. So, say a pump needs repaired, then they'll have the sheet with the pump and all the data on it and the initials of everybody that had worked on it that year. And then they'll change those cards the next year. But everything is in black and white, what you have to do every single day, and you sign off on it every time you do.
Yeah, in the Army, that's called PMCS, Preventive Maintenance Checks and Services.
Exactly.
Yeah. Can you describe watch to us?
Watch is I did sounding and security, so I was in every space on the ship 4 times over the course of 4 hours. So I visited every place 4 times, 1 hour each. And there's a clipboard that you have with the area on it, and then it has either a bilge reading, or it has uh, dial or uh, gauge readings that you have to write down, and then you sign off. And then you go up to the officer of the deck on the bridge underway, and he looks it over very quickly and he signs off. And then you go back down and you start that round again from aft to forward to the bridge. So I'm going from after steering to shaft alley to the secondary engine room to the primary engine room to the ship stores places to the magazine. You don't enter the magazine, but there's a valve down below that you turn to make sure there's no water in the magazine. So if there is, you write down the fact that there's water coming out of that valve. You shut the valve, you call the bridge, and then they start lighting off the pumps.
Can you explain sound and security?
Okay, well, when you get down to the engine rooms, there are 2 of them. One has 16-cylinder cats, and they have a 440 volt generator on the back of each one of those, and that goes through bulkhead to the secondary engine room, which is an electric drive. It's one big monstrous electric motor and one shaft. So all of those 16 cylinders are supplying the electrical power for that one, which pushes the ship. And there are bilges underneath the cats and underneath the electrical motor, and you got to sound those bilges. And every hour, that level on that pole should not move at all. And if it does move, down is okay, because chances are they've lit off pumps that they didn't tell you about. And if it's going down, you just tell them when you get up. But if it goes up and they didn't do anything to make that happen, then there's a leak someplace. Water's getting in someplace. And we'll come to a story here in a minute I'll tell you about. It's really funny about sounding poles. But yeah, you're supposed to, you sound the bilge, you bring it up, you find the place where it's wet, and you mark off how many graduations in inches there are of liquid in that bilge.
So you
And there
say
are several bilges
you
in that.
sound it with a sounding pole.
Right.
Can you
You just
describe that?
You just lower it until it comes into contact with the skin of the ship.
So what is a sounding pole?
A sounding pole is a steel rod about 9 feet tall, and it's graduated. It's cut in inches, um, and it's a solid steel pole. So it weighs a pretty good, probably 50, 60 pounds. And you're lowering that slowly if possible. You try not to let it thump on the ship. Not a good idea.
So the
'Cause
pole makes contact, and are you listening for a sound
no,
or
in best case scenario is it makes no sound. If it does make a thump, yeah, it isn't like you're a submarine, Everybody knows you're there. But with these older ships, like this particular one that we're talking about, it was commissioned in 1943. So the skin of the ship over that period of time doesn't exactly get flaky, but it could. It's it was explained to me once. It's about anodes and zincs, and if the zincs aren't right, it has a tendency to make the skin of the ship flake and get thin. And over a period of time, those sounding poles can go right through the skin of the ship, and that actually happened once.
oh
Yeah, that's what I was telling you about.
yeah. So you're testing that pole is to test that material then.
Not necessarily test the material, but to find out the amount of water or oil in a bilge. And you can know the amount of gallons that it's a known amount because of the area of the bilge. That's a known area. That space is known. The depth is known. So you can take that space times the depth, gives you your gallons, gives you your liters, or what have you. I didn't get that much into it. That's more of an officer's thing on the bridge. And they decide whether or not to pump bilge. But I was in the process, my first Westpac, going over, and I dropped the bilge in dropped the sounding pole into the bilge, and it just kept on going. And I got done with the round, got done with the round of that watch, and went up to the bridge and told the OD. So the OD told them to light off pumps in B1 engine room and keep the pumps going until we got to Hawaii. And we tied up at Mole Pier in Hawaii, and they had a guy come over from the Gompers. Usually the Gompers or the Jason, one of the two. It's a repair ship. And he went down, and they put a cofferdam on the bottom of the ship. And a cofferdam is a half-inch piece of aluminum about yay wide by yay wide. And have you ever seen pool noodles that kids play with? Well, they take like a pool noodle and they cut off an end so it's not round. And they take contact cement and they glue that to that piece of aluminum. And then they take and put it down there on the skin of the ship right under the hole. And then they cut that piece of steel out from inside and then put in another piece and weld it around on the inside. And then the diver takes a crowbar and pops that off. And he welds it from the outside. That's what he's supposed to. And that's how that got fixed.
Interesting. So when you say that pole kept going, where'd it go? Like through the ocean?
I don't know exactly how deep the Pacific was there, but 6,000 or 7,000 feet comes to mind.
So it went through the rest of the ship. And
Oh yeah. There is no rest of the ship underneath that. It's just the ocean underneath
oh, okay.
that. Yeah, it goes straight through and kept on going until it hit the bottom.
That means there was essentially a hole in the ship.
Yeah, that's why they had to keep those pumps lit off until we got to Pearl Harbor.
At this point, were you a little concerned?
No, not at all. I mean, that hole was only as big as that pole was wide,
Yeah, but
and
it's representing a larger problem, I would assume, right?
yeah, yeah, it was. But that's why they cut out a 3 foot by 3 foot section of the skin of the ship to repair. So they were going a good distance beyond on either side of that hole, just to make sure that and you could see it from where they cut it inside, whether or not they had good steel to connect another piece. Yeah.
So in this process, doing these checks is part of the watch, which is outside of your regular duties, right? Because you have like your
Yeah,
job you do also.
exactly. I worked in the welding shop.
So then, what would you do for your regular duties?
For my regular duties, just PMS, just plan maintenance. I'm going around because I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer rating, because they don't have AC&R guys aboard ship. I got trained to do the readings, how to put gauges on refrigeration equipment, take the settings from, you read the amount of Freon in pounds in the line, and then if it needs it, you charge it. If it doesn't need it or it's overcharged, you release it. And that was back in the days when it didn't matter very much if you let Freon go. But that's what we did. Then they found out that that was bad for the ozone.
So you're the one to blame.
Yeah, pretty much. Me and about 10,000 other guys like.
So you went to dive school when you came back from this,
Yes.
then, and then did you then work frequently in the capacity of a diver?
Twice. Twice I had operational dives, but for the most part, anything that needed to be done over the side, I could do with an airline hose mask. Do you know what that is?
Like it's forced air supply, like
Exactly. It's just a mask on your face, and it covers your mouth all the way. And there's a airline comes into the mask, and you're wearing a dive belt. You got a diving knife on your leg, and you've got a utility pouch with whatever you need in it, wrenches, nuts, bolts, what have you, to do whatever you're doing underwater. And 9 times out of 10, that doesn't have to be done at depth. Only twice did I do some stuff at depth.
what did you do at that?
There was an F-14 from Lemoore Naval Air Station that crashed off the coast of Baja California back in 1977. And the Chewanick went out there with uh, the Chewanick was a fleet tug that I was on. It was my second ship. And uh, we had side scanning radar, and we had a pod that they put over the side, and they dragged that along the ocean bottom in a racetrack pattern for probably 4 days before they found that jet. And then after they found the jet, they anchored right above it, and all the while we had a Russian AGI out there watching us do this stuff. They were looking for it too. And they put me over the side, and about 10 hours later I got down to the bottom, and I spent about 18, 19 hours on the bottom cutting this piece of metal from just after the cockpit to right in between the twin stabilizers. It's a titanium beam, essentially. And I got that thing cut out of there and got it secured, and went ahead and had them pull it up. And then for 23 more hours, I got to go up 70 feet at a time.
So you were underwater this entire process?
Yeah, 414 feet.
How many total hours was that?
10, 23, 33, 20, almost 50 hours.
So over 2 days.
Just about, yeah.
So were you in some sort of? I mean, because that wasn't just an oxygen tank, right? So
No, it was an entire. Uh, you ever seen the movie Men of Honor? The Those guys were Navy divers. Those suits were what we wore, and those suits weigh about 300 pounds. So I went down there wearing one of those, and you can use your imagination as to how you take care of your own business.
yeah. So you had then air supply coming from the surface down there.
Yes, it was a surface assisted dive.
Okay. Um, and did you just not eat?
I had stuff that was taped to the side of the helmet that I could get to, high energy stuff. Um, Not really granola bars, kind of like the stuff that they give the astronauts. You could suck into through a tube. They just pasted it on the side of the helmet and made sure that the straw was long enough you could get to it. But if you had to use your hands to get at your face, no, not happening.
You're pretty ravenous by the time you get back to the surface.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's putting it mildly.
Did you have to take any sort of nap at some point down there?
No, you can't. You can't, and they make sure that you can't. They gave me a pretty large dose of amphetamine.
I
And
was
said,
gonna say.
"Yeah, this is going to keep you awake. Don't be worried."
So you're not only awake, but you're zinging.
Oh yeah, I was definitely zinging. Felt like my scalp was crawling.
Uh, this so when you go down there and this is, I mean, this is extremely long. Have you ever done anything remotely close to this like this before? Any sort of length of time?
No, nothing like this. No, this was this is a once in a lifetime deal. Man, you could have written a book about that one dive.
I'm sure they gave you a nice award for that.
I was written up for a commendation, but it wasn't anything I got decorated for. I was just doing my job.
Yeah, I'm sure if you were an officer, you'd have gotten a Medal of Honor though.
Eh, I don't know about that.
The officers always get the good awards.
Officers don't make dives of 414 feet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so I mean, you're working continuously while you're down there, right? Like,
All the time. Yeah, there is no slack up. None at all. And it was just me. They couldn't send both of us down there. There was They weren't going to risk two guys on something like this. So, I mean, if one guy gets lucky and they get it done, great. If he's unlucky, well, then he's unlucky. They're very cavalier about that sort of thing.
yeah. So what does this process look like while you're down there? I mean, you're because I'm sure you're not sitting idly by. You're going one step to another. What are you doing? What is this? What are you telling yourself? What are you doing? What's going on?
I'm opening the aluminum from just after the cockpit to right in between the twin stabilizers. And then with uh, wrenches and crowbars, I'm pulling back that sheet. And then when I get to the piece that I want, I have to cut that with a carbon arc torch. And basically, you know what that is? Okay.
But you can explain it because this is
use it to cut steel. And oxyacetylene would have been great, but there's no way to run that hose down there. So you just use an electrode and a piece of carbon, and you
Yes, so
strike it on the
I think today
steel like,
that's called a gouge.
yeah,
It's a basically like a carbon pencil, like or welding rod,
exactly.
and you force high amperage and voltage through it. So you might weld typically somewhere around 110, but you're burning that at around 300, and then forcing the steel out, washing it away, right?
Exactly. And it blows it out too. It You can see it blowing out the backside. It's something that they tell you to make sure that you have your suit, your hands, your gloves, your legs out of the way of that slag as it's coming, because if that penetrates your suit, you're screwed.
So to make this work, are you creating an air pocket around the work environment?
Not really. It's sort of making its own. Uh, I mean, the amount of bubbles this thing makes when it's running almost creates an oxygen-rich environment. It's it's hard to explain, and I used to know it all, but this was like 44 years ago, and I have forgotten a whole lot of stuff, but the events are as clear as they were when I did them. But
You're you're down there pretty far away from assistance, running
yeah,
some pretty dangerous equipment.
yep.
Are you concerned at all at this point?
No, I was very well trained, and they made sure that my confidence level was very high when I went over the side. They uh, give you the pep talk, as it were, and I gave all the right answers. Hoorah!
The amphetamines help too.
Yeah, that too. That too.
um, you get down there, you see this piece of work you have to do. What is your first impression?
Uh, well, my first impression was explicative deleted, and my second expression was, well, ain't gonna get done looking at it, and I started in. You know,
At any point during this process, was there ever any doubt on whether or not you're gonna be able to complete it?
yeah, there was, and uh, there was an option for me, but I didn't want to do that because, frankly, it terrified me. But I was supposed to lay charges around this plane, and they would detonate it from up above. But I had the charges on me. You know, I had a backpack with them around my waist, and I could just pull on them around. And I just put the C4 all the way down the fuselage, all the way across the wings, all the way around the engines. And if it became necessary, I could just, I had this little beeper that I could beep. There was like a code, like 1 is done, 2 is need help, 3 is everything is cool, 4 is, sorry, we're going to need to blow this thing up. But I was able to get the I beam out of there. It was kind of like an I beam. Anyway, that was my impression of it. My arc of light that I had was probably 12 inches, and it shone in front of me off the top of my helmet, and I could only see this much of anything in front of me at any one time. Everything was just solid black around. You could see out. If you raised your head and you looked up out you could maybe see 10 feet. After that, the light just disappeared.
So you're you have C4 strapped to you, and you're running a carbon arc gouge, and you're not a little bit concerned about anything?
It was on my back, and the gouge was in front of me. So, not really. I would have had to have screwed up by the numbers to have that happen. And there was no way I was going to do that. I was very confident in my abilities.
So this was the first time. What was the second time you got to operate it?
That was a 220-foot dive, and that was off the that was in a lake at Otay Mesa, California. And a chief petty officer had gotten drunk at a ship's party and drove his car off the dam at Otay Mesa. And his car sunk all the way to the bottom of the dam. It's about 220 feet. And I went up there and with another diver, and we went down and we found the vehicle. But there were catfish down there that were as tall as you are. And probably, I don't know, their mouths they looked like that big. They looked like caves. And we could not find the chief. Chief was gone. Couldn't find him.
Never did find him?
Never did. Found the car, brought that up, but never found the chief.
Think he was fish food?
I'm thinking. I mean, I got a couple of pictures of those fish just to bring them up and show my chief up on the dam, because he was going to say, no, you're going to go back down there and you're going to find him, because he was another chief, you know. And, you know, they got to do for each other. I personally think those catfish munched him.
Wow. So, and by chief, you mean E7, right?
Yeah, E7. My chief was an E8. He was a
Matt.
senior chief.
Senior chief. So during this dive, are you scared? Because these are some pretty big fish.
I was concerned, but not scared. I had my diver knife. I had a very powerful flashlight. And they came at me, and I flicked that light on, and they saw the light and backed off immediately. So I wasn't worried about them coming towards me. They were about probably as shy of me as I was of them.
And did they ever find his body?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, I got out in 78, and this was probably 9 months before that. And in those 9 months, I never heard another word about it.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. You know, I know that that catfish are pretty voracious, and I have seen guys. You know what noodling is?
Oh yes.
Yeah. You ever seen guys noodle for catfish?
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I could stick my arm inside a catfish's mouth.
It is not something that I want to partake in. That is
No,
sure.
I've seen them do it. I've seen them yank them out of these holes right in the side of banks. You know. Yeah, flatheads.
I've
As
I've
long
gone
as a guy's arm all the way up inside that fish.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I've grown extremely fond of my left and right arm over the years.
Yeah,
And
I'm rather attached to both.
For sure. So how do you think your time in service impacted the rest of your life?
Positively. Just hands down. I got out of the Navy and I went to school at Iowa State University, and I'm at this time, I'm what? I was 24 going on 25, and I'm a freshman at a state university, and all the other freshmen are 17, 18, and I'm 25. I'm as old as some of the instructors. As a matter of fact, I tried to make moves on a few of them. Sorry, can't go out with you. It's not done. And I go, but I don't care. Whatever. No fraternization. Damn it.
You were single the whole time you were in service, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I almost got married. Boy, it would have been the biggest mistake of my life. that, that's a whole nother story, man.
When you got out, did you have GI Bill?
Yes. Yes, I
You,
did. And
do you
I
use,
actually had my father's for the first year I went to college. And so I had his for the first year, and then I had mine for the next 2 years. Uh, I started school and I stayed in school until I was done with school. I just kept going in the summers, and I didn't have anything else going on, so I just stayed.
yeah. Um, do you think your time in service made you more disciplined in school?
Definitely. Um, when assignments were given, assignments were completed when they were supposed to be completed because that's the only training I had. You don't do something halfway and you don't engage in something that you're not going to complete. It's just not done. It wasn't in my DNA.
What was your field of study?
History. I I absolutely love history. Uh, Especially World War II. Uh, when I was in the Pacific, I went to a lot of the island groups, the Palaus, the Solomons, the New Hebrides, the Carolines, the Gilberts, the Marshalls, and a lot of war got fought in those places. And I got to see a whole bunch of it. I even got to go to Truck once, and that was like Japan's Pearl Harbor.
Then
And that's what focused me on majoring in history.
mhm. Did you eventually get married?
Yes, I did. I married a beautiful young farm girl from North Missouri. Her name was Denise, and ah, excuse me. We were married 24 years, and she got cancer and passed away.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. I was a smoker for over 40 years, and I gave it up about 8 years ago. And she died of lung cancer.
Mm.
Never smoked in her life. Ah,
Did you have any kids?
yeah. Had a son, Nathan. He graduated from here, as a matter of fact, last December, and metal fabrication and welding like his dad.
Oh, nice, nice.
He wanted to join the Navy, but he had scoliosis and they wouldn't let him in. He was going to be a Navy diver too.
Do you think that your time in service impacted how you were as a father or a spouse?
Uh, in a positive way. yeah, I left all of the things that were a negative about the service behind me. Um, I figured if anything, I was going to take away the positive lessons that I learned, and the stuff that, uh, well, I mean, you've been a junior enlisted man, and you've seen what senior enlisted men somehow sometimes come off to junior enlisted men, and you don't exactly come away with a positive feeling from most of those. And I left all of those behind. I just I remember all the great things, all the great port calls, all the great camaraderie, all the friends.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, now that I've retired, that's something I'm definitely going to do and make a point of doing. Is I'm going to travel around a bit and see how many of those guys are still alive. Because I really would like to see some of them.
Yeah.
But we were in our early 20s, and we're talking about 40 odd years ago. So I'm 65. All these guys got to be at least that old.
Mm-hmm.
So
Um, what made you decide to get out?
I put in a chit, what they call a chit, a request chit, for first class diving school, because I wanted to stay in the service for as long as I could stay in the service. And the captain of my ship, uh, he disapproved my chit because excuse me, there's no first class diving school on the West Coast. The only one that there is, well, there were two. There was one in Pensacola, and the other one was in Norfolk. And they had just recently closed the one in Pensacola and turned that into uh, NDTS ND was Naval Dive Training Center. It's NDSTC in Pensacola, and then they opened up the first class diving school in Norfolk at Little River. And if they transferred you from the West Coast to the East Coast, they wouldn't get you back, because the detailers on the East Coast would send you to where they wanted to send you, as opposed to what the captain of my ship on the West Coast wanted. So rather than take a chance of losing me, he just said no. And I just said, fine, I'll extend for one more year and go on Westpac one more time, and then I will see you later. And so that's what happened. I got out in 5 years instead of 4, because I extended for that last year.
So you basically got out because they chit you not.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I never thought about it that way before.
Feel free to use that one when you tell this story again.
Will do.
um, what was the most memorable thing about your time in service? Or, let's say time in service, and then, how does that compare to the other memorable parts of your life?
Well, there was one port call we made in 76. We went to Hong Kong, and I met this old guy up on Victoria Mount. It's this, there's this mountain right there in Hong Kong. You get to the top of it, you can see the South China Sea on one side, and then the Hong Kong harbor on the other side. And I met this old French dude, and he was up there walking with a cane and just taking in the day. And I just said hello to him, and he said, "Oh, you're an American." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I'm French." And I said, "Yeah, I sort of gathered that." Anyway, I asked him how long he'd been in China, and he goes, "I've been here all my life." And apparently, he was there before the Second World War when they had the legations, like the French, the Germans, the Italians, whatever. They had all these places around Shanghai, and he was in uh, Beijing, Peking, back in those days, and Chairman Mao had recently come to power. I guess this is 47, and he was making a speech, and he was standing on this fire truck. And you know what a monitor is? It's a brass nozzle that kind of looks like a rifle barrel or perhaps a rocket launcher or whatever.
I'm not familiar
Anyway,
with it.
it's a brass thing, you direct water flow
Oh, okay.
from a
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
fire
Yeah.
truck.
Yeah. Hmm.
And he had this, he was kind of leaning on the monitor like this, but it was pointed in the general direction of where Mao was standing. And they put him in prison for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we sat up there and drank a couple of Tsingtaos, and he told me the story about his life in prison. I told him about the Navy.
What was the worst thing that ever happened?
There were so few bad experiences, but if I had to put my finger on one, and quite literally, I was in Subic Bay in a little town called Olongapo, and I was going back to the ship, and this little turd jumps out of this alley with this pointed stick, and I put my hand up like this, and he stuck me in my little finger right here, and it immediately swelled up to about the size of your thumb, like double. I don't know what there was on that stick, but I damn sure didn't want him sticking it in any other part of me. But if I had to pick a bad thing, that would have been a bad thing. I had an infection that wouldn't go away for 3 weeks. And like I said, I have no idea what was on that stick, but he wasn't sticking it in me again.
Right. Yeah. Is there anything we've left out? Anything? Anything you'd like us to know?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, for the most part, boot camp's boot camp. Anywhere you want to go, boot camp is boot camp. Just the uniform's different. Um, Petty officers are the same. We didn't get the rifle training that you guys got in boot camp. We got to shoot 22s. Uh, we had to march with a rifle. We never shot it. Yeah. It's,
I would
called
imagine probably during that time period they were, you know, a little short on them.
No, they were '03 Springfields, and bold action. Yeah, only the Marines got to march with M16s or M14s. M14s back in the day. God, those things are heavy. To all the young people that are going to see this, that there is no greater challenge than to accept your country's call to arms. You will never regret it. you will always come away with a positive experience so long as you come into it with a positive attitude. There is no free lunch. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to go outside of your comfort zone a lot. But you will not regret it in your later years.